Okay, it's finally happened for the Christmas episode and the season 1 finale, Confessions at the Cabana. The tables are turned and I am in the hot seat. My dear friend Strider Wasilewski takes over and asks me the questions that I usually ask everyone else. We talk about my childhood, my rock and roll years, how I survived all that, and how my journey and the road eventually led me to a Malibu and this cabana. Grab a drink, let's get cozy, and come celebrate with us. We'll call this my Christmas confession. My name is Zoe Scott, and this is my podcast, Confessions at the Cabana. I was born in England, and I chased my dreams across the ocean, landing in America, and then driving all the way to California to live my rock and roll life. I've journeyed from living in the wild to lighting up the stages all around Los Angeles, and I've got plenty of stories to share. But this podcast isn't about me. It's about creating space for others to share their stories, stories that inspire, stories that bring us together, and stories that heal. So come join us here in Malibu at the Cabana.
It's not an old life. It's your life.
It's my life.
Yes. And that is why we're here.
To talk about my
We're going
life.
to talk about your life now. I love it.
You know, whenever I get my chance, I'm always like the little girl that got invited to the cool party. I think I was one of those little girls that wasn't too cool. And so I've always wanted to be cool.
I guess cool is circumstantial,
It is.
you know? And by the way, you have a very cool story.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, just like going through the songs and the videos and then just like reading through that paragraph that you sent.
Ah!
And the fact that like, you know, you've started out kind of in a creative place with your family,
Yeah.
your mom and dad.
They were artists.
And
Yeah.
then, you know, you followed a passion and a dream to Hollywood, and you like ended up in the desert in a cave, and you were writing songs the whole time, and then you ended up actually getting slightly funded and then $1 million and then recording, and now you're in Malibu, at one of the most beautiful places and sought after places to live that you could ever possibly imagine. I mean, I just got chicken skin talking about it. You have got a crazy arc of life, which has lows,
It had some lows.
but you've ended up on your feet.
Oh, I always feel like the cat with 9 lives. I really hope I'm only up to number 7 or 6.
If we only have 9 lives, then I'd be dead.
Okay. You and I have that in common because
So
we like
let's
to
just-
risk it.
And Matthew McConaughey one day told me something. He said, I said, the bus is going to hit me. And he said, what? I said, yeah, everything's so good. And he was telling me how good my life was. And then he looked at me and he said, don't you ever, and he was actually upset with me, don't you ever insult the universe by putting a limit on how much fun you can have.
You know what? I want that to be the theme of our day.
And I don't want you to put a limit on it.
No, thank you for saying that. I think that is something that resonates with me because, you know, I grew up in an alcoholic home in England.
Touche, me too.
You too.
In England.
In England. And there's something about the highs and lows of alcoholism that my whole life I've struggled. Like you were saying, when you're having a great high, all of a sudden you think it's going to turn into a low or everything's going to go to shit because my dad could make everything go to shit at times.
I mean, I would love to dive into, you know, those moments in your childhood where you had creative parents, but they were obviously a bit loose and, you know,
very loose.
So, you know, and I understand that. And you sharing your experience of highs and lows is what I want to know, because what was it like being in the home of creative yet, you know, addicted parents?
It was heaven and hell at times. The creativity, the abundance, my mom's painting, my dad's art was amazing. I mean, my mom she'd invite all the neighborhood kids in and they'd all be doing pottery They'd be throwing like clay at the walls. It was total chaos, but there was an incredible lightness there, and in a very beautiful area, London. But then my dad's alcoholism uh, was a bit like being on a bit of a bipolar ride.
Yeah.
You know, like 1 minute it was pure bliss, and then you'd feel that energy coming in the house late at night. Beer was his thing.
Yeah.
And he would it was very Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
A bit more than abrupt, I'd say. You know, he would get quite verbally abusive when he was drinking. And, you know, over time, my mum learned to give it back. One time she hit him with a frying pan. You know, that's what they do in the UK. But I have to say, my father was the great hero of my childhood. He introduced me to rock and roll, to the Beats, to Elvis Presley on TV, to doing your own thing. So I don't know, sometimes people are a mixed bag. I absolutely adored the man. So I think maybe that's probably why I came across the world, followed Jim Morrison to sing, you know, because I had a father like that.
I mean, it does sound like with your mom and your dad, it was a good mix of creativity and sanctuary for you and other people at your house, with
Yeah.
other people coming in and kids in the neighborhood. And then also, you know, with your dad giving you the freedom to look at all this cool, creative rock and roll music and new music and kind of a lifestyle that did not exist just beneath your feet where you were.
I think that would sum it up. I think that's why I love Malibu so much, because it's this lovely blend of families and, you know, us all knowing each other, and that maverick creative spirit, which has always been part of my life, you know.
Well, did you would say that you were in the suburbs or the outskirts in London?
Suburbs.
Okay.
Or kind of the outskirts. It was basically the last stop on the train, Hampton Court. We lived within the shadows of Hampton Court Palace, which is the place famously Henry VIII lived. And so I grew up with all the stories of his 8 wives. And if you were a bad wife, you got your head chopped off. So it was quite very much part of my childish imagination, Henry VIII. You know, there would be all Henry VIII festivals and
the old country.
It was like growing up in the History Channel, basically.
I was just going to say, you said flashes of it, but you literally grew up in it.
I grew up in it, and I grew up.
I mean, they make whole TV shows about it.
I grew up in it.
But you made your own.
No, I mean, my parents used to have parties they'd call the Lovers of History, and they'd all come dressed as
different characters,
kings and queens. And, you know, I grew up in a really colorful neighborhood, a bit like Malibu. I loved it. The alcoholism made me very sad and at times very frightened. I remember I used to sit in my the loft room that I lived in as a little girl, and I don't want to cry, not at the top end, but I would pray to my dead grandmother and say, "Oh, please come back or make this stop." You know, because I think kids, they just love their parents so much. You know, they just love them and unconditionally. And you're not angry. I mean, that kind of came later. But
as it does, as the teenage years set in.
Yeah, you're not angry. You're just like, you know, I think my childhood set the stage really for the seeds of becoming both a performer, an artist, but also a healer. I always wanted to heal my dad. I always wanted to say, "Dad, I'm so proud of you." I always wanted to heal my mom. My mom had a wicked temper.
Pulled out the frying pan, yeah.
Oh, my sister and I were talking about that yesterday. She just came back from London. And I think there wasn't like physical abuse in my home. There wasn't sexual abuse, but there was a lot of verbal, emotional abuse. And over the years, I've had to do a lot of healing to sort of overcome that. And, I still have a nervous system that can get like tweaked if I don't much like confrontation.
Yeah. It's not easy growing up with that factor of kind of an emotional distress and alcoholism and things that really can kind of they ignite certain feelings still probably for you.
Absolutely.
And that
I don't
part's
know if they'll
hard.
ever go away.
Yeah.
I related so much to your story, Strider, because my dad didn't get thrown in jail, but there were times where the cops picked him up. I think he ended up in
And
jail.
in the holding tank a few times.
Yeah. And,
The drunk tank, they used to call it anyway, when you get a little out of control, so they needed to put you in a place to relax.
Exactly. For a night. So,
Oh, wow.
you have to also understand that we're talking about England, where stiff upper lip, 30 years ago, there was still a lot of class system there, and you swept those things under the rug. You didn't go to Al-Anon, you didn't go to AA. In fact, when I was 18, I begged my parents to go to AA, and I just basically said, look, here's the deal. There's a problem here. You can either go to AA, and I will stay here and support you, or I'm out of here. And
This was at how old?
18.
18, okay.
Yeah, 18, I think.
Still
17,
so
18.
young then.
17, 18. And my mum said, well, things are a lot better now. And I don't think I want to go through all that. Actually, for me, it felt like he was really ramping up when I was a teenager. So I needed to sort of get out of there,
Yeah.
One day, when I had my first boyfriend, I was remembering when I was trying to remember all these stories, I think I left a sign on the door telling him, my first boyfriend, to meet me at the doctor's, which was a really foolish thing to do because I think my dad came home drunk and thought, she must be pregnant.
Oh, gosh.
So he showed up at the doctor's with this cane saying he was going to kind of kill my boyfriend. That was a terrible scene. So I witnessed a lot of scenes like that, or a fair amount of them. I remember my dad dumping a plant pot on one of my friends on my 21st birthday. But I also got the magic. They were truly magical people who...
I feel like if you can, at this point in your life, see the magic of what they gave you and not just rest on the faults that they had, because a lot of people never get over it. And to be able to move on takes a certain type of spirit, and you seem to have done that. I know that you probably still have the emotion of it and feel it, and it can come up, but like you said, it never goes away. Just hearing your story and talking to you about it makes me feel all the things that, I saw when I was growing up with my parents, and the violence and, between them, and it was hectic. But you talking about it, it helps other people.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Looking back now, I don't know if I'd swap my childhood for someone else's. At the time I was like, oh, why couldn't I come from a more normal family? But you know what?
I think
I loved them. They were amazing. My father later went back to art school and he stopped drinking because he found his bliss, which was being an artist. And they set me and my sister free to the world.
What a happy ending to that. I mean, to the monologue that we've had, and then to come out on top of it, like you're saying, that he quit drinking and found a peace and a happiness.
It was amazing,
That's really, really cool.
Never too late to go back to college or become an artist. I think he was the oldest student there. He was about 60.
Wow.
And he loved it. My mother never forgave me for taking my sister and running for the United States. She was always very upset about that. But recently, when I was there and I spoke to her, she said, I'm going to say this. but I ask forgiveness of my my British family and friends. She said, "What a crummy place this is. I want to get out of here and go to LA." So even she, in the end, saw why my sister and I were so enchanted with this place and the journey. I think she forgave me.
How old were you when you guys decided to fly the coop and go to LA?
To go to LA? Well, I previously I trained as an actress in London, and I lived in Rome for my early 20s.
Okay.
And I lived in a palace in Rome. It was crazy, and I made horror movies. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, but before you went to LA, you did this?
I did this from 21 to 24. I fell in love with an Italian guy. I fell in love with Rome. And
Always the Italians that get the, beautiful women. These guys, they have that saying, you never count your lovers or your glasses of wine in Italy.
I love Italian people.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're so full of life.
So different to England. And I think I needed the yin to the yang, and I think maybe my fairy tale mind was, I think little girls have this idea of fairy tale, was going looking for the fairy tale family. I did live in a palace. They were completely nuts, probably more nuts than my families. So don't go looking for the fairy tale.
Would you agree? Sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
With this, so, from your house to a palace is it really anybody normal? I don't
think so.
I think that there has been this weird pull to find a normal in life, and there is no such thing. And I feel like
what is that weird pull for normal?
And so for you to go out and be in another place that's just so outrageous, it's so beautiful to me. It's so creative and so full of life.
Yeah, I was doing theater. I was living in this palace. It was sumptuous, dysfunctional, crazy, and just what I needed. 21, the Italians really gave me a break. They put me in movies, and I loved it. So how I got to LA was basically I was cast in a movie in North Africa by Columbia Pictures. When I was 24, I went to North Africa to play the Empress in a movie with Brian Brown called Age of Treason. And I had a friend who was working for Panavision. And after I'd been on this movie, I called him and I said, I've got to go and do some overdubbing. Could I come and stay with you? He was living in Malibu. So 23, I first drove the PCH, and I fell madly in love. I'm a person who falls in love with places and people.
Has that drive changed at all for you?
No.
It doesn't change, right?
It is so mesmerizingly beautiful. But we have that kind of Wild West thing here where we're all a bit out there. I think you say Australian. Right?
This is where everybody came to. It used to be called Poverty Point, and people would come out here because it was so far away from the city and where everything was happening. And so this was actually the least sought after place to live.
Wow. I think what I found in Malibu were the two themes that I really relate to of me, which is, I've lived in palaces, but I've also lived in caves, so, and I've sung rock and roll. I just love both the freedom, but also some of that refined living, probably. I don't know, the creativity.
Let's get back to driving out here to Malibu. You left England. You went to in Rome in Italy?
Yeah, Rome in Italy.
And then North Africa.
Yeah.
And now you've serendipitously found your way to the PCH and driving up to your friend's house in Malibu.
It was wild.
And you were 24?
23 and a half, 24.
And where? I mean, you said you ended up in a cave? in the
Yeah,
desert?
so basically, I came to Hollywood. I realized that was, I made friends with Gary Goldstein, who co-produced Pretty Woman. He sent me out to agents, but I realized compared to Rome, Hollywood was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I found it a bit intimidating. It's a bit like seeing a big wave coming towards you and going, I don't know if I got the chops yet. I don't know if I got the chops yet. And so I decided after 4 months, I was going to go to London, which I did. I had an amazing time in Hollywood, and I definitely got a good look around. And I went to London. I ran into my sister, who just finished college, and basically, my sister and I began this absolutely epic journey together. We ran away and lived on the mountains of Spain in my godmother's house, and we wanted to write a screenplay. My godmother was gracious enough to give us this house for 5 months and keep us there and feed us. And basically, during that 5 months, we listened to all the Doors. We listened to all the Bob Dylan. We watched Janis Joplin. She had all these amazing documentaries. We read Joseph Campbell. We read the Beats. We read all the American philosophy and listened to all the music from the 60s. The Doors said, look, no one's going to give us money to make a movie. It's easier to write songs. We were like, who's going to give us this money to make this movie? So by the time we left Spain, we had come up with this absolutely crazy idea, the two of us, she was 3 years younger than me, that we were going to go to California, back to California, and sing rock and roll like the Doors. So how did we end up in the cave? We came back to LA with no money. And so I said, look, we're not going to survive here long with no money and no car. What would Jim Morrison do? I said Jim would go out to the Mojave Desert and he'd live in a cave and he'd write his first album out there. We'd never written songs. I could barely sing.
Are you guys on any hallucinogenics or marijuana or alcohol? Or I'm honestly, like, this idea of going out and living in a cave was pretty off the wall.
Well, here's the thing. No drugs involved. To be honest, I've always been a little scared of drugs.
Okay.
Because of my dad's history. But we were listening to a lot of psychedelic music, and Ken Kesey said at the end of the 60s that we don't need the drugs anymore. He said we can become heroes by just going into nature and spending extended periods of time. So I had this idea. I was like,
there you go. And
we're going to become heroes. We're going to go and live in a cave.
So the music was inspiration.
The music was medicine.
Yeah.
The music was healing. The music was the Bible for us. I get tears when I think of those 60s singers, their vision, They were, in a way, they were our parents too.
Like when you hear music, what it gives you, and especially live music, it really blows right through you. And you can listen on the radio, but when you hear live music, I feel like it really changes you.
So here's the thing. I grew up writing poetry. And when I heard Jim Morrison, in particular Jim Morrison, his lyrics, and he was epically beautiful as well, I somehow found this muse for my artistic journey. So I just figured, follow Jim and I'll be all right. He was also an alcoholic and a drug addict, like my dad. Now I look back and I see that. But so the desert seemed like a very practical solution. And we were lucky enough, we were in Venice. And we ran into these young men at a party. And I said, we've got this dream. We want to live in the desert. We want to live in a cave. We want to write poetry. And one of them was a very nice painter called Fly. And he said, you want to do that? I said, yeah. He said, meet me Monday. I'm going to take you somewhere where you can do that.
Wow.
Monday came. We had our bags. Fly and Bing drove us out to the Mojave Desert. Never seen a desert before. Awe-inspired, like, wow. And they had a friend who was a fabulous gay Mormon who looked like Jesus. I know this sounds really psychedelic, but they drove us out to this place. I swear, I've never seen anything like it. It was so frigging fabulous. He had created this garden. It was near Pioneer Town. It was way outside Yucca Valley in the middle of the wilderness. Cement teepees, peacocks walking around, pools, crystals. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, Jim would love it. We've arrived. We have arrived. So Garth was really our first, American dad, gay dad. He took us in with open arms. He gave us a cave. He looked out for us. He fed us. Oh, he's passed now. Cry.
Oh, please keep going. I'm blown away.
So, I love the spirit of American people. The spirit of American people. I'm going to cry now. Because ever since I came to this country, the most amazing American people have taken care of me. So Garth was the first. He was so kind. He believed in us. And he was a hippie, and he was from the 60s and 70s. And he said, sure, you want to write poetry in one of my caves? But, my sister and I, because of some of the dysfunction we were coming from, sometimes we didn't entirely trust people. And I think we lived on Garth's land for maybe a couple of months. And then we decided he was trying to influence us a bit too, in a slightly patriarchal way. So we decided we had to find our own cave. And we left his land and we wandered through the desert and we found this incredible cave. I have to admit, the first night we were absolutely terrified because we thought that we heard mountain lions. And
I'm sure you did.
We scuttled back to his land, but we found an amazing boulder that we could sleep on. And we thought, okay, if we sleep on the boulder, the mountain lions won't get us. So we would sleep on a boulder under these incredible moons. And it was beautiful, equally as beautiful as living in a mansion, being there with my younger sister. We were such kindred friends. And I would rap poetry because I figured that's what Morrison would do. And she would write it down. And that's how my first album was born, Beautiful to Be Alive.
Wow.
I really recommend it, a vision quest, at least once in your life.
That's what you did.
Yeah, we left it all behind and you just go and try and have a new vision for your life.
Was there anybody else around?
Just Garth back on his land. And my mom would send us a little money from England to buy food. And my sister would go and buy things like ramen, things that were very cheap, canned yams. We didn't really have very much, but we did have this dream that we were going to make rock and roll like the Doors. So
basically done a vision quest, found a view of what it's going to be, but then how do you end up parting that life going?
I mean,
what's next?
I think Garth had an incredible sort of sense of what we were doing, and I think there also came a time where he probably thought we'd outgrown the garden. He found us a shack where we would have a generator to make demos, and we only had one friend in the US, and he was British, and he was the president of Panavision. And one day we rang him from the local cowboy bar, and he said, "Where the fuck have you been? We thought you dead." I said, "Oh no, we're out in the desert with these Mormons that'd be very nice to us." And he drove out that afternoon, and he was worried about us, and he ended up being the person who bought us our first equipment and a Ford Ecoline, so we had somewhere to live if we ever needed it. Um, while we were living in the shack and creating our first demos, we happened to meet Ian Asprey, who was the lead singer of the Cult. And it was crazy. We met him in a grocery store, and he said, "Who are you?" Because we were dressed pretty wild. And I said, he said, are you movie people? He said, "No, we're music." He said, "Really? Do you know who I am?" We said, "No." He said, "I'm Ian Asprey, the lead singer of the Cult." And we said, "Well, we're here on our vision quest. We're here, we're following our mentor, Jim Morrison." And of course, Ian's mentor was Jim Morrison. So the universe always provides, it always aligns us. And it was Ian who said, "Look, you can't just stay out here in the desert forever. At some point, you've got to go back and face the wall. You got to go back to LA and make the dream real."
And so he was the reason why you went back?
Yeah, he was, he was right.
Basically said it was time to...
He said, he had a great sense of theatricality. And he said, "I feel like John the Baptist coming to tell Jesus, you got to leave the desert." So we ended up living in that Ford Ecoline outside Jim Morrison's house on Laurel Canyon. We would go and swim in the pools of the hotels like the Mondrian and Chateau Marmont to get clean. And we had all these books and this music equipment. Didn't have much money. Probably one of the toughest periods of my life, trying to break into the music business on nothing but a dream. Really, really tests you trying to do something like that. That's like surfing the big waves.
When you say it tests you, was it emotional?
All of the above: mental, emotional, physical.
Yeah.
How do you go from living in a cave and having a bunch of lyrics to breaking into one of the toughest businesses in the world, in one of the toughest cities in the world? So we were very lucky. Luck has been with me. I think my angels have been with me. Fortune, yes.
Because luck is preparation and opportunity meeting.
Yeah.
So you've done things to get to those points.
The way is always revealed. And if you, like you said, if you do the work, a new pathway will open. And we have been making these little demos. And there was an attorney who was saying he was going to put up some money for us, but I think really wanted to get laid. But we were out for supper with him one night, and my sister was feeling quite protective of me and defensive. And we were in the Mondrian, probably eating a good meal that we weren't often eating. And he said some stupid comment like, "Why don't you forget all about this music and go to Barbados with me?" At which point, my sister gets up and goes to the bathroom. And when she comes back, there is a slightly drunk young Indian man following her who sort of plops himself down at the table without even sort of asking. And he said, "Hello, I've been watching." He had a very British accent, actually. "I've been watching you people. You seem like interesting people. My name is Rajiv, but my mother calls me Zeus." We later formed Zeus Records with that young man.
No way.
Yeah. My sister, who is the light of my life, and I could never do this adventure without her. She turned around to him and she just simply said, "Listen, man, we've come here to live our dreams. We need some money to do it. Have you got any money, man?" And he said, "Do you have any demos?" And she said, "Yes." The rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Well, I don't think there was anything simple about the journey we did, the three of us. At times it was...
No, but the question to him, it's a straightforward thought.
Yeah, and I don't think we even ever thought he would send the money.
Yeah.
But he did.
And you started to record?
It got us out of the van. It got us into a room in a place called the American Hotel. We started cutting demos. Um, I went through a very difficult time around about then because I think, it was a big adventure for a young British woman. My nervous system got very stretched and I started having these terrible panic attacks downtown LA. Downtown
I can
LA
imagine.
is rough.
All the lights, all the noise, all the buildings,
I wasn't eating
cars.
much.
I mean, it's stressful.
Yeah, after the desert, I wasn't eating much. I ended up one night, I thought I was having a heart attack, but I was actually having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And this very sweet guy drove me to the hospital. And we got to the hospital and, I was wearing these big black eye makeup at the time. It was running all down my face. And they said, no, you're having a panic attack. I did have malnutrition. I was living off, the odd bit of food that was in this studio. And I have to say, after that, the good people, I think they were called the Soul Folks Cafe. After I went through that, they started feeding my sister and I one meal a day. So, again, American people. But anyway, it was shocking. And I think Rajiv, who'd become this friend of ours, was very shocked. And he flew into town and got us a house in West Hollywood. And we kept going with the journey.
What about the recording of, your first song and album? Does that, after all of this, obviously, how did that happen?
So, again, very lucky. The way is always revealed. I was recording at Cello Studios. And that used to be, Rajiv was incredibly supportive of my talent. And after I went through a very rough, 6 months. And he thought, okay, let's just put her in the best studio with the best people and see if we can help the boat float. And while I was in there recording, I met the number one recording engineer to this day is my favorite person in music, Jim Scott. And he was recording the Chili Peppers, the Dixie Chicks, Johnny Cash, the Rolling Stones. We have the same surname.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he just really liked my sister and I. And he decided to mentor us. And how I learned about music was like going to Jim's sessions, sit down, shut up and learn. They're the Chili Peppers. This is how you do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he introduced me to my first engineer and recording producer, Ken Allardyce. And Ken beautifully helped me take all those lyrics, along with some of the finest session musicians in the world, Tim Pierce, take all those lyrics and make them into an album.
I'm just thinking about the way that you come through the arcs of different places and people and found a vision in the desert, ended up back in LA, and all of a sudden you're in front of these people who are the best in the game, like the best there are in the game. Is that not like the pinnacle of, you had this moment of what you wanted and there it is?
I think that was huge. I think that was a high, but for me, honestly, the biggest high was probably the first time I ever performed at the Whiskey A Go-Go, which was the place, of course, Jim Morrison.
Yeah, the Whiskey is the peak of all live performance.
I remember walking onto that stage, taking the mic and just screaming down it. And it was just both terrifying and thrilling. My sister was singing backups. Oh my God, that was, I think, of all the moments, that was like, fuck me. I made it. I'm doing what Jim did. I could feel the spirits in that place. I could feel the energy of it. I could feel that all my heroes had performed there. The go-go dancers, the sheer power of a rock band, and that sort of Dionysiac feeling that
there was a certain like mist in that place and like smell and that vibe. I mean, I can't even it's almost unexplainable, right?
Yeah. It was really like, for me, performing at the Whiskey, I don't know if it was so much about fame and fortune as a spiritual quest and a need to pick up the baton for these, I so admired these amazing singer-songwriters. It was picking up the baton and continuing on.
Ugh.
That time I was living in Laurel Canyon. We would throw parties at the Chateau Marmont after I would perform at the Whiskey A Go-Go because Rajiv was having an amazing run of luck on Wall Street. And so he and all his friends would blow in for my performances, and we would take over the lobby of the Chateau Marmont, or we would rent rooms, and I would throw crazy fucking parties in there. No drugs, but just a will to live out our rock and roll fantasy. Did get a bit
wasn't a fantasy anymore.
I know. I remember Jim Scott coming to that performance at the Whiskey, and I remember afterwards at the Chateau, he said, "Well, there's no going back now." So,
that's a great comment.
Yeah, I love Jim. He always sorted me out in the toughest moments. I had a couple of people during my Hollywood years who, because it's a bit like when you're competing. It's like a competition, rock and roll, and you need trainers.
Well, there's always the next best thing.
I think also you need to make sure you survive.
Yeah,
because it's a fast-moving game, money involved, people's lives involved, and I learned that I had to be really grounded playing that game. And I used to also spend time going out to the Mojave Desert and with this medicine woman, and learning about the native Indian ways. And I think I needed the healing arts to balance the rock and roll. Otherwise, I might have just gone off the edge, I think. Not made it back. It's a will to survive.
So you found a dream that you were after, and you also created a place that you were in love with.
Right. You mean like
where you were in life at that point?
I was living the 1960s life. There's a book about Laurel Canyon. I'm in it. And Vicky and I and Rajiv, we were doing everything from producing videos to photo shoots to radio tours to, it was a lot of work. I always say, because Rajiv went to Harvard, so I always say I went to the Harvard School of Rock and Roll because I was on a treadmill. And, maybe that kept me safe, because we had an incredible work ethic. After I launched Beautiful to Be Alive, I went on to record probably one of my favorite albums, which is Woman on Top. It was very tongue-in-cheek. Rock and roll was a bit of a boys' club. And I was thinking, well, okay, I think that was part of the inner rebellion and challenge to see if I could do it too. I was really groomed by the feminist singer, songwriter, publisher, Suzanne Koch, to write that album. I was very proud of it. I worked really hard to get it out, and it won. That was another real high. It won Best Rock Single at the LA Music Awards. I felt really seated at that point in what I was doing. I had grown a lot spiritually, emotionally.
But then you said that there was the downside of the hill, that you had gotten all this success and you've had this beautiful dream come true, but it was still really hard.
So I think what happened after Woman on Top went out, we did some successful radio tours with it. But I think Rajiv, he was pretty burnt. He was pretty tired. He had put probably 10 years in of investing. And I think he was giving it his last push to see if Woman on Top would break, which put me in a really precarious place because it meant, just like all the record labels, you have to break out of the gate, like surfing a competition. It meant that I had to have a single. My first single had to be a hit to keep going. And we decided to try and break it out of England, which was ironic. That's where I started. And so I went right back to the beginning. And I put out a single, Hard Habit to Break, the first one, and it didn't break. It didn't break.
Right.
So I did this tour of England. I kind of knew what was coming next. I always remember doing a radio interview just in Surrey. It's where I came from, where I talked about my journey. It was very bittersweet. It was very intense and bittersweet. And then I went back to LA, and a couple of weeks later, Rajiv said, I'm pulling the plug. Can't afford to do it anymore. I went all that way, and then, I wiped out.
Yeah.
And within 6 months, I lost my record deal. So no money. I lost my home because the home that I was living in, actually was a renovation project between Rajiv and I, and wanted the home back. I totally wiped out. And I was really quite burnt out because, it's a treadmill. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like being a racehorse and people gambling on
Well,
you.
you always have to be on,
Always on.
which is the most unbelievably wearing part of like the psyche, because always having to be and expected to be this like light and this person that's always going to bring what you want to see, right? And it's just impossible.
I felt like that.
It's impossible.
One of my friends said that. She said, you've been this racehorse for years, that performs. And I had done a lot more healing in my life at that point, done a lot more therapy. I'd done a lot of time with this wonderful Native American woman, Nita, who I always think saved me from myself. And she had taught me about the earth, the stars, the animals, ceremony. Again, no ayahuasca, nothing involved. She would spend time in my house in Laurel Canyon. She'd light the whole place up with candles, and she would say, I'm going to teach you to journey. It was absolutely such a gift. And to this day, those spiritual teachings are what keep me grounded. But I had done it right, maybe not at the top where Sheryl Crow had done it, but I had done it at a real rock star level. And I knew what it would mean to do it with no money behind me. I was always quite scared of the major labels in a way. I wanted to be an indie artist because you got to really be tough. I think I'm strong in a way, but I don't think I'm tough. And so I probably can find a tough side. But so I just decided, I was like, I need a sabbatical. I need to really deeply think about what I want to do. I was pretty tattered from the whole thing. It was like jumping off a diving board onto concrete or something. Not quite that bad, but do you know what I mean?
I do.
With 3 inches of water at the bottom. And it was incredibly sad to leave my home in Laurel Canyon because it was the only home I'd known on the road. But as luck would have it, I have to say, thank God Laurel Canyon kicked me out, because I decided the only thing I could think of was I want to go and walk by the ocean in Malibu. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going to rent a room and I'm going to go study more deeply this native Indian spirituality. And I did. I found a teacher up Los Flores Canyon, and I just started walking by the ocean. And I feel like I was walking out of my own shadows. I walked for months, just regrouping inside of my soul. And Malibu was just salve on the wounds. It was just like, just the spirit of the nature and the ocean.
Putting you back together.
Malibu put me back together. I was studying the Native American way, and, they really believe in the ancestors and the spirit guides on the other side. I was having an amazing time, actually, one of the greatest times in my life. I wasn't performing, totally free for 8 months, not to perform. And
during that 8 months, I knew that I really wanted to have a big love story. I wanted to have a home life, family sort of thing, not my own children. I actually wanted to be with someone with children. And one crazy night, I was in a restaurant with an Italian friend of mine and a friend of hers, and in walks John. And John and I had this very otherworldly connection. We're definitely like, I always feel we've done all this before because we're both Celts. And I always say, when he's complaining about how much my projects are costing, I always say, well, remember when we were in the 1800s and I was the star of your show and you were always the producer going, oh my God, it's too good. I'll have to go and find the money. So we have this wonderful, eccentric relationship, my partner and I.
It's pretty amazing.
And we fell in love. He had lost his wife 2 years before. It was very, very sad. I guess we were both a bit sad, really. Kind of found each other in that sadness.
Where was this?
We met at V's.
Oh,
and
just in Malibu.
Yeah, just in Malibu. So that's how I ended up.
You are now.
That's how I ended up staying in Malibu.
But you've also, now that you're here and you've created a life and you're in the most beautiful place ever, you've started something that's pretty creative and successful and feels amazing with Confessions at the Cabana.
I love it. I realized I tried my hand at a bit of TV. I was developing some unscripted shows. I went to Rio. I recorded a bossa nova album with John, and that was an amazing experience. But I was losing money on TV, and John said, you know what you got to do? You love talking to people. You love chatting. You're going to podcast.
I think John strikes again.
Yeah.
I just feel like to have to go through all of these different people and places and find yourself back in Malibu and meeting John and having somebody to love and support. It's just like after everything you've put into life, it's giving you back life.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
I have such a love of this place, Malibu. It's given me so much. So really, Confessions at the Cabana is my way to give back.
If people aren't inspired by following a dream and understanding that there's a different way through this story just alone, it's impossible not to be inspired to want to go out and risk it.
You got to really risk it.
And coming through to like you have done with an arc of certain things, everything stops and then you restart. So people are too scared of the stopping.
I actually find that's where I'm at my best because I'm a performer.
Well,
the rebirth process.
You have an unbelievable tenacity and knack for recreating yourself. You've done it.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Thank you. I think that goes back to my parents, my mother.
Yeah.
She was a really tenacious woman and amazing woman. And despite everything, dealing with my father's alcoholism, everything, she reinvented.
But the fact is you can get the help from other people, which we all need, right? But it's up to you to stand back up. It's up to you to win a mental war, to physically get yourself out of a place and open another door.
Yeah.
Because so many people, doors close and all they see is what was, behind them. So many people don't have the strength and the will to go and open another door. And you seem to be able to do that, and you've done it time and time again, and I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. My name means life. Zoe means life. I have a grand passion for life. And I am so inspired by people. And I've had so many muses here in America, people who have just totally inspired me. And can't throw the towel in.
No.
Always got to give it my absolute best shot. I am somebody who understands when I need to pivot. And I think that it was my destiny to come to Malibu and not stay in Hollywood.
Well, thank God you did.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that, man.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You're the only person I could think of that would sit here and hold space for my story.
It was an honor.
You know, I love your story so much, and it reminds me a lot of my own story. It was very inspiring the first time I heard your story, and I was like,
Thank you.
there's a kindred energy and
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities within, and I feel like circumstantially we've both risen to the occasion.
and ended up on this street. Thank you for the day. Thank you, Strider.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's do some more.
We'll do some more for sure.
Awesome.